call this meeting of the Rocky Mount City Council Committee of the Whole to order. And I'd like to welcome everyone who's here, visitors, citizens, staff, and those who are not normally here. We've got a pretty full agenda for today. And I guess for visitors, I'll state what we always state, this is a working session of the City Council. There's not an opportunity at this meeting for public input or comment, but there's always that availability of at the City Council meeting at 7 o'clock. So, having said all that, let me recognize the City Manager to initiate the meeting.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of council, it is a rather lengthy agenda, but we'll start with the one-stop shop report. You might recall this is an initiative that council asked that we put together in response to helping with the development approval processes. So with that, I'm going to ask Will if he would make the presentation. This is to shorten our development process with the hopes of making it more efficient for developers to get through the permitting process when they come to us with projects and proposals.
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Just want to give you an update for a one-stop shop. So the group that has been meeting, our mission was to obviously improve the coordination of efforts through multiple departments. It's not just development services, it's a whole slew of them. Increase our timeliness that we are, so we're competitive. Increase quality of customer service, and for the permitting and inspection processes. So a lot of these roll into technology enhancements, functional improvements that we have, and then review streamlining throughout. Thanks, Chris. So one of the main things that we need to look at was look at our applications and paperwork, emphasis on paperwork. There's a lot of paperwork that we have, multiple forms, applications that get handed over, passed through to different departments on different floors, different areas of the city. Sort of centralize our data and information and development services, make it easier for us to look up things in the past, figure out when this rezoning occurred, or when was the permit, when was the inspection created. So we have some software systems that we're using right now, and we're looking to utilize those more effectively and make it more user-friendly for the customer. So you have a lot of contractors, builders, developers that are used to these things, but your general off-the-street citizen or customer coming in for the first time to get a permit, maybe fairly cumbersome, the process, and they're not aware of how long things take, and we just want to make sure that we're giving them the best that we can. And again, communicating internally as well as externally to those interested parties. So using our technology and again, improve our customer service experience throughout. So we've got development services is kind of split. So we've got our planning side, and on one side of the hall, inspections on the other. We'll bring in engineering at times. We've got public services and others. So that's just the whole identifying ways to improve what we have here in Rocky Mount. So we want to maximize the use of existing technology that we have. So we found that we've got some items that would be at zero cost to implement and add, just a matter of staff training and availability. And also coordinating procedures and staff. So we're not sending people across the hall, up and down floors, across the street and back, or on the phone likewise. Not transferring people over and over and over and over again. Let's figure out centralized point of contact, creating online permitting inspections, and increasing their access to the information online. So we're looking through our website, and you have to drill down a few pages, looking at development services pages, looking at inspections pages, different forms, different applications, and we'll show you in a minute how we have addressed some of those issues. So using our online portal integrated with existing city services, utilizing our Munis software. We'd love to make it available for online appointment requests. People come in, and it's not a great customer experience because they come in, they're looking for one person. We don't really have on-call staff. Someone may be at lunch, someone may be out of the office, and we're getting pieces of information at a time. And come back later, come back later. We don't have, the zoning information, everyone's out. So we can make appointment requests and create options for online payments so no one has to come into the office unless they absolutely want to. Submitting plans electronically. We require a lot of hard copies, but if you can submit via email, we can put it all in our system and we can start the review process a lot quicker. Mobile capabilities for inspectors. They have some capabilities right now, but they're still using walkie-talkies in some cases to respond back to another staff person. That staff person then has to be responsible for putting the information in the system. So looking at ways to utilize mobile devices to approve inspections, deny inspections, but also potentially have photos available for those so you can see why you failed, so it's not a secret, or why you passed, and have that information transmitted immediately to the customers. Integrating GIS and allowing for quick search and retrieval of information for anyone. So it's not, you have central point of contact where feasible, but if anyone calls me or anyone calls any on staff, they can go through our computer system and figure out where they are in the process and when was the item submitted.
When you're looking for somebody's paperwork in the system, are you pulling it up by their name, their company name, or have they assigned some number in that you?
There's permit numbers, there's also contractor names, and a lot of that is how you enter that information. So you enter in builder's information one time, it may retrieve it and pull it up. You type it in a different way, a different time. Makes it complicated when you're trying to search things. The permit number is always the best way to do it, but you can also sort and search. So getting people the accessibility of these permit forms, allowing electronic submittal, improving self-serve access to people so they don't have to come in. So we're open 8:30 to 5, but if you want to work on permits overnight, send an email to us. We can start it that day. You don't have to wait for our hours. Improve customer understanding, and again, the single point of contact to the extent possible. Chris is going to put something here for me here. I have to hit escape. There we go. So we've gone through a lot of our permits, forms, and applications, and we've created fillable forms that you can print if you're waiting on something, or you want to print it, you want to do a hard copy anyway, but now you have the option of the fillable form, and you also have the tool to submit to our one-stop devserve@RockyMountainNC.gov email address, which is open to a number of employees that have access. So you've created not just something that comes to me and gets lost in 100 emails or so a day, but you're submitting it out to a group in our department that has access to. It gives them a response. Thank you for your email. There's a form response. We'll get back to you within 24 hours. And that opens the access to send out, and they can attach files too. So they can do the permit, they can attach plans, the whole 9 yards. So we're giving people more options that they can do from home, away, across the country, hopefully, as we get more development here. Thanks, Chris. All right. I think we pretty much covered that one. Just start the next slide. Good. These functional improvements improve customer experience. If anyone's gone to get the permit in our inspection side, you walk in and you're greeted right at the counter. There's a small table to the side where you can scribble information. So if you have more than 2 or 3 people in there, it becomes quite. It's not a great experience. You're out in the hallway. You've got some other areas. So looking to improve the quality there, evaluating our space, and improving our workplace efficiency. And finding that information, being able to initiate review a lot quicker, whenever at your leisure and receive services more efficiently overall. You all right? So we looked at, as far as development review, looking at our application information format. There was a lot of items that we just had that were just paper copies. We didn't even have PDFs or anything available. There's Word documents, paper that we just kept making copies of over the years. There was no real standard format either. Figuring out how to do payment processing online, streamlining our permit processing and routing. So a lot of times you'd have a permit and it wouldn't go anywhere until I was finished with it, or the next person. So you have to, fill the lock and dam as you're moving down, but now you can blast it out and do a lot of things concurrently. Increasing customer notification options. How would you like to receive it? Voicemail, email, however you like it. So technology utilization, figuring out how we can use technology to eliminate the handing of paper copies over or anything like that.
Question,
Yep.
if there are multiple people able to fill out a form at any given time, and one person makes a change and somebody else is looking at it later, is there a time stamp for every time there's a change made? How do you, if there's only one copy in the system, so whatever you're looking at is always the most recent one, right?
You're talking about the permit forms. You could all open it up right now. You could all fill it out simultaneously with separate information. And then when it gets to the point of it being submitted is when that would save. But you could also, if you want to save it to your desktop for a record, if you want to print it as well, if you like to maintain those copies. But it's not key to, if I have it open, no one else can look at it.
Right.
It's available depending on the bandwidth and everything else like that. So it's a more technical question than I have the answer for. But of all the processes we had, we mapped them all. There's a lot of people wouldn't know where the process was, a lot of local history. So figuring out where an item started and who it needs to go to and who it needs to bounce around. But we looked at this as a way to figure out areas that we could cut out to improve efficiency, but also train new staff as they come in. What do I do with a sign permit now? Or how do I process the rezoning? I'm not sure. But so now we have all these processes mapped on the backside.
So you'll be able to decrease the waiting time?
We hope so. And a lot of things, and it really wasn't spelled out how long things would take. So certain individuals know when you apply for a rezoning or anything else, you gotta wait till the next meeting and the next meeting. But if you're coming in for adding a deck or a storage building that's prefab, you would assume that you could fill out the permit and walk out. So a lot of that, we're trying to get to a point where we have some performance standards and turnaround times comparative to the rest of the areas around us. But finding a way to let them know in a simpler format, when you submit, it gets the applications determine completeness, who has to review it, and give you sort of a window, 2 to 3 days, 3 to 5 days. Other processes could take you a lot longer depending on the complexity. But so using the process here, we found ways that we could do email notifications, automatically forward things with our system by email or by Munis that we currently use, so we can cut out a lot of weight in some of these processes and streamline significantly. So as far as what we've done, we've mapped every single application or permit that we have for building inspections and planning. We've created all those new forms for online submittal. They're on the website now, they're live. We've created a single point of contact for that application submittal. We've already received some applications. We've already sent some applications out electronically. And we've used analyzed the software that we have from Munis. They've given us some recommendations on what we can do short term at no added cost and what we need to look for in the future. So a lot of it is in process, and then ongoing. We don't want to just stop here, but figure out, is there an issue with the permit? We're able to fix it on the fly, and where do we, it's constant. These last two are basically constant improvement. We don't want to stop now We'll do LDC updates as needed, land development code, where processes have changed. Evaluate our customer service, the lobby manager service that other departments use so they can create appointment scheduling sometimes. So we've looked at quite a bit, but again, want to stress that it's constant improvement and trying to get performance standards built in. It's,
So the bulk of what we're doing right now is really technology, process improvement
right.
with existing team members, and then maybe some space reallocation.
Right, there's I believe there's an item on the agenda tonight for space allocation needs and right, so instead of us working just on a pretty place, which a lot of people have done, and some places that we visited that had one-stop shops, you'd see it's a great place to come and your customer experience is high, it looks great, but they're still using paper forms, and we were telling them that we process mapped all our applications. We're like, oh my God, that's in our 2 to 3 year plan of what we want to do. You guys are on the ball doing it on the back end, so when everything goes, you turn the switch and you're in a whole lot better shape, and you know where your problem areas are and what you can address. So, absolutely.
So you'll be using like pretty much existing staff to manage the whole process.
Right, and then we're looking at ways to.
Better realignment.
Yeah, we're, at least I am, on our side, sort of a succession plan. We got people that are timing out, retiring out, and how can we better utilize, what we have and cross-train and get that, so a lot more people know a whole lot more about the process. So if someone leaves on vacation or retirement, we're not lost and tell them, wait, they'll be back in a couple days. So absolutely. Yes, sir.
Will, now this is separate from the developmental review process,
Mhm.
so that's another process we talked about.
It's kind of built in. It's kind of built into that. So we also mapped a lot of those processes, and we have one of our big processes looking at site plans and all that, and trying to change, allowing them the digital submission versus sending in 30 copies and doing them all over the place, but having that, allowing them to run the processes concurrently as well. So it's not it doesn't get to a person that's a stopping point.
So
So
what about the having them sit on on a review so they can make decisions right there with staff?
yeah, we can make that. We can strongly suggest that be a requirement. Typically, it's up to the applicant, but I agree with you.
I mean, as an option.
Yeah,
not to have to.
it's an option now. I just don't think we vocalize it or do that enough, because I think you're right. It's a fantastic way, just as we are here, all the right people are in the right place to try and figure out the answers and the solutions. So it just makes it a whole lot easier if they're there and they get a punch list, as opposed to waiting on comments. Who do I need to talk to now? Do I go to John? Do I go to Brad? Do I go anywhere else? So we're absolutely going to make that. Actually, I had a request this week for one, and we're going to make that a little bit flexible. They don't have to come to DRC necessarily, but if they want to come in, we get enough advance notice, we can pull people together. So yeah, I think that's the last one. Any other questions?
So what's your timetable? What's the time frame?
Most of the stuff that we've got, the forms, applications, everything is already online. And it's a matter of, constantly figuring out, is that working or is it not? So we've sort of gone light years ahead of where we were. And even at some minor things on our website, if you look at it in a different browser or you're on your mobile phone, you get to a website and you've got to scroll a mile down. We've created some links and other things, but it's a constant improvement, but we've made significant changes to our forms and applications processes already. So a lot of this stuff, like the permits that we just showed you, all that stuff is live, the website is ready. We also, on the main page, there's a option, how do I apply for it? It was building permits. So now we've changed it, how do I apply for permits and other applications. we've made it a little bit easier to get to and access, but also eliminated a lot of the page drops in succession.
That's good.
Any other questions?
Well, in all my paper here, I wanted to recognize the team that assembled and worked on this because it is cross departmental avenues. Chris or Will, can you? I can't find my paper to recognize those individuals.
Yeah, the members that worked on it are Amy Staten, Brad Kerr, obviously Will Deaton, Joseph Cook, myself, Erin Hicks, she's our executive administrative assistant, she takes notes on minutes. We have Natasha Hall, who's a key member, and then we have two interns, Andrew Jubiak and Chase Nolan.
So we're hopeful that the comments will come in, that Rocky Mount's processes are very user-friendly, as opposed to what we have been hearing from these improvements. And as Will said, there will be an agenda item at the regular meeting to design the first floor area where utility billing used to be for this work group to go. So that'll be on the agenda for tonight.
So can I just ask another question? So are we looking at relocating the entire inspections division, first floor, just the area that we need for the special processes?
I'll let you answer that.
It's part of the process. It would be beneficial if we were all on the first floor. And just in general, it's easier access for customers as they come through. And we've got quite a lively experience early in the morning as people come up and they're kind of waiting outside. And you've got more space down there. We've got those people that are in the field the majority of the day, so it's easier for them to have first floor and head off and take off. But we'd like to get everybody as much as we can in that space.
Is
But
enough space to do all that?
It's gonna be designed for that, so we believe so.
Is that inclusive in the budget that would be on the action we're taking today?
It'll be in next year's budget, the actual construction cost, but the cost for design and such is in this year's budget.
The full
For
move.
design.
Right, for the full move though, that's my
Oh, the
question.
full move, that will be next year's budget. And this year's budget is funds to design it. You have to design what that area is gonna look like.
So let me ask you, because I might not be clear.
Okay.
So in this design,
Uh-huh,
we're looking to move our entire inspections department to the first floor
right,
in a manner that will be much more customer friendly
Yes.
and support the design that you're giving to us today.
yes, along with some other functions that support the entire development process.
Gotcha. Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's what we mean by one-stop shop.
Right.
So that they're not running, people aren't going from office to office, floor to floor, and through technology, not even having to cross the street, go over the utility bill.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just
Will,
one
thank you. Yes, Mr. Duffy.
comment, From where we started back before you came here, it sounds great, and I certainly applaud all of you for what you've done so far. Just one question from a standpoint of where you started and where are you now? 50%, 60, 20?
as far as getting everything, that space is gonna be the next sort of place for us to have a decent front counter with more than one person sitting there. You'll have hopefully a couple different staff members that can address a number of items. So we've got, at least where we are now, you can start in inspections or you can start in planning, but you're going back and forth and back and forth. And functionally also to have a space as people come in where we can utilize a screen like this and look at your zoning, that'd be fantastic. But we're far enough along with the permits and applications, it's given us a great jump start. And then the integration with the software is gonna be another great step in the background. And then that final piece is gonna have the new space that we'll occupy. So we're further along than a lot of people. We've done a lot of work in the background to try and implement some of these changes. So when we have the new space, we're not struggling to improve our processes then, and it just doesn't work. So we've kind of gone about it, I would say, backwards, because some people don't. They'll get a new space first, and then try and implement some changes and space, and they get to a point where they're trying to figure out the space modifications, and there's escalating increase in costs. And we saw that where we were. We visited, they had some counter space, but they put some walls up, and then they figured, well, they couldn't see if a customer was sitting in the lobby, because they put the walls up. Then they had to get bulb mirrors, and then they had office space and conference room that turned into office space because they didn't space plan properly. So I think we're doing it the right way, Mr. Bullock.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Accelerated Facade Improvement Grant. This is a carry over from council retreat, and Kevin Harris will present the proposed grant program to you.
Good evening. As City Manager stated, this was discussed at the retreat in Chapel Hill, and since then, it's been on the fast track. In fact, we met with some downtown stakeholders, and they affirmed that this would be the facade grant would be well received in the community, especially the downtown community. And you note that you have the policy guidelines in your packets, and I'm just going to summarize the policy, and I do have a summary handout for you if any of you would like it. So it's the Accelerated Facade Improvement Grant, and the Accelerated, it speaks to the fact that what we like to see it do, and it's a $5,000 non-matching grant designed to expedite access and delivery. So we want to get it on the street as soon as possible. The purpose is to accelerate downtown revitalization, financially assist and incentivize downtown property owners to improve their property, jumpstart overall building renovation, improve the face of downtown, hopefully to attract new businesses and investors and patrons. And also, we want to move development of lease space, because there is interest from small businesses that want to move downtown, so we need to get spaces improved. And then also, we like to encourage more development of rental spaces. Certainly the $5,000 grant doesn't do that on its own, but we hope that it will stimulate activity. And then overall, we want to continue the city's objective and the momentum to establish downtown as a primary area in the city to live, work, and play, but also to realize your economic opportunity. So the roles involved. First, the grant will be administered by the Community and Business Development Department. Applications will enter through the Downtown Development Manager. Development Services, we will work with them to assure appropriate inspections, code compliance, and to assure that it meets historic preservation guidelines. Because the area we're talking about, most of it is in a historic district. Then the grants will be reviewed and approved by a team consisting of Development Services and Community and Business Development. Then we'll have a final CMO approval. And it will also be, we will communicate what we're doing with the applications or the status of applications with the Central City Revitalization Panel. Now, the eligible location, it's the established downtown core. And that's the basic boundaries of the downtown core is Franklin Street, Gold Leaf, Atlantic Avenue, and Raleigh Boulevard. But a map is obviously included in the grant application. And the uses, the allowable uses, I'll list those, but it's not limited to that. The allowable uses will include brick or wall surface cleaning, patching and painting of facade walls, signage or lighting replacement, repair, canopy, porch awning installation repair, window and a door replacement repair, mortar joint repair, railings and ironwork repair, cornice repair or replacement, and replacement repair to exterior steps. And so again, those are some of the uses that we listed, but it's not limited to that. And the application process, well, one, the application will be available via hard copy in our department, but it also will be available via the downtown website. They will, and the applications will be received, they can bring in the hard copy to our department, but they also will be prepared to receive them via email. It's a, we want to make, I guess, in the interest of expedition, getting it done, it is a one-page application. And, but, obviously with that, sounds good, one page, but included with that one-page application, we'll be looking for historic building images, and that's if available. Detailed schedule of proposed work and budget, copies of required permits, and the owner's written permission. So the beneficiaries of this grant, they don't have to own businesses. They can be leasing, and as long as they have permission of the building owner. We'll need proof of property insurance, and then, assuming they're corporations, we like to see the entity documents or the bylaws, organizational documents. Funding options, typically our grants have been purely reimbursement. We have two options. One will be reimbursement, direct payment to the applicant upon completion and approval. But again, to make this available to all of our downtown businesses, they can work out an arrangement with the contractor. It's not on us to put them together, but the applicant can work with the contractor, and we'll be a party of that, not a formal party. And that's to where they can agree that they will receive payment at the end of the project, and so we can assure that contractor that we will pay them at the end of the project. And we've also built in an appeal process. So the Central City Revitalization Panel will serve as an appeal board for applicants who wish to appeal an application denied. The budget, we budgeted $50,000, and I can assure you we'll have a commitment, or at least we'll have applications that will exceed $50,000 pretty much as soon as we roll this out, based on the requests or inquiries that I received. But the $50,000 is really based on getting the projects completed and the payout. So we've allocated $50,000 to get us to the end of the fiscal year, but certainly there's additional funds available if needed. And
That's just to the end of this fiscal year, which
Yes.
is July.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'm assuming that we're gonna make an assumption that we're gonna roll it out next year. So in a year's period, there could be another 10 or 15 or whatever we budget for.
Certainly. Yeah, because we're, and I do want to emphasize that the $50,000 is based on payout. So it's not going to restrict us from taking more applications and making commitments.
We're going back to
Yes.
the budget, just so you know, we started with that because these are funds that are being pulled from within the existing budget, since this was a non-budgeted program. So we thought we would start here, and certainly, you know, with council's direction, the next year's budget can allocate sufficient amount. I think going into this, as Kevin has said, we'll have a pretty good idea of the interest, and we'll expect it to be, you know, quite, we hope that it's going to be very active, so that we can make a good recommendation to next year's.
So the people that don't get funded this year and they turn in the application and we get funded, start next year, we'll start right at that starting point.
Right, so it just can roll over. Even the unspent funds for this year will probably be a carryover.
I know part of this result of the meeting we had with the downtown stakeholders several months ago, and they asked about non-matching grants. So this fulfills that part of it, but, you know, we also talked about code enforcement and things like that. So is that gonna be a part of this as well?
That'll be the next agenda item.
Okay. All right.
But now, Councilman Joyner, you mentioned them waiting
Yeah.
till the next cycle.
Mhm.
And that's not, as I understand it, if the projects are completed and we eclipse the 50,000, we will identify more money to keep the momentum.
Oh.
We're gonna tell them, we're gonna hold you off until the next fiscal year.
Okay, so we will identify more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Knight.
I was gonna make a comment to what the mayor said. This facade grant didn't solely come from the downtown merchant requesting this. This is something that the council saw that would be a quick uplift of downtown. I'm not taking credit away from the downtown merchants, but we're working together. But I just want to put it on the record that this council recognized, due to our Main Street recommendation, that there were buildings in our Central City district that needed a quick uplift. And you bought into it, and so did the downtown merchants. So I just want to make sure that this council also would be giving the correct, not accolades, but credit to this program, you know, because we saw that it was a need for that to be done. I just wanted to make sure we get our stories. how
Well, we've
it
had
actually
facade grants before.
Right,
Facade.
we get
But
the
this is the
side,
first
so I
time
need
we
to
had
bring
one
it
like
back.
this. This came from council.
And we, as I mentioned, it's on the fast track, and we fully intend to roll it out April 1st, which is, I think that's moving pretty fast.
And we'll probably roll it out soon. I mean, it's a matter of
Tools
just
are there.
putting the announcement out there. The form is already developed, so
So
I would expect it to
I
be.
have a question. You have in section 4, application process, it says be financially stable. What does that mean, and how do you determine that? That sounds somewhat generic and vague,
Well, that,
and that seems very subjective to me.
That was supposed to come
It's
out.
coming
Okay,
out.
okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought also.
We all had the same question.
Yeah, our
I
conversation.
apologize if that's
That's
still in
okay,
there.
that's okay. Our conversation was that there could be properties that were not ready for full renovation, but looked blighted, and we wanted to uplift the
Right.
face of downtown, whether they were ready to go or not.
Mhm.
Just wanted to make sure that some people might have properties that they're not using currently, but we wanted to make sure that it didn't detract from the rest of downtown.
I understand the desirability of making the building look nice for purposes of people riding through on the train or whatever, but I'm reminded that if a building is not structurally sound and you give somebody money to fix up the front, it's still not structurally sound. If you have a roof that's leaking, you continue to have rot of flooring inside. So how do we make sure there's some level of integrity to the building itself?
And we do realize that that's not going to be a perfect science. And so our team, Development Services and Community Development, we will come together to assess those situations on an individual basis. So just because the application came in doesn't mean it's approved. We will assess that situation, but we aren't going to require, at least our understanding from the council is that you didn't want us to require that they qualify for a CO.
No, there's a difference between qualifying for CO and having a building that's not in danger of continuing to collapse.
Yeah. And so that, again, we're gonna assess that on a deal-by-deal basis.
I'd just like it included in the conditions and things, because if it's not included, it's not likely to be a requirement.
Some verbiage around that?
Yes, sir. And we
Can
don't
you-
want to be
can you
putting
s-
lipstick on a pig.
Yeah, but you need to specify that for me to appreciate and
And I'm not
understand.
asking to be the one that specifies that, I'm just
But
saying we
won't
have to
three
know.
point three sort of add a little bit to that, planning for
I'm
improvement,
asking.
must confirm existing building regulations? Don't they kind of say a little something towards that?
Well, if the roof is collapsing, Why would you put windows?
Something.
That's my point,
Right,
exactly.
so I don't,
Right.
But look
Yeah,
at
so we
the-
wouldn't, again, it's not a perfect science.
Right.
And finding a way to document that was a bit of a challenge, but I think we can get close to something.
and we do have buildings downtown, I mean, with a beautiful building.
Yeah.
And some of them just have windows that are broken.
Mhm.
And to fix those windows and to paint the front, I mean, it would do a lot to,
Yeah.
our downtown. And we do have some that's not so good, but I don't think they'd be trying to put windows up there, the whole roof is off. You know, some of this got to be common sense to it.
Yeah, so if you look at 3.3, it's sort of,
You're right.
you're a little bit into that.
So we're gonna market it through our city and downtown website and Facebook, Instagram. We'll certainly use the newspaper. We'll be sending out a direct letter to the property owners, and I will be proactively looking at various sites to take advantage of grants.
Question about the Rocky Mount Historic Preservation Commission design guideline.
Yes.
So, just want to make sure I read it correctly. It's not getting approval for the Rocky Mount HPC. Is that correct?
Well, and the way it will play out is Joseph, and this is the way we use it for the building assistance grant. We put it before Joseph, and he looks at it to make sure that we aren't making the facade grant in this case we won't make any changes to the building that will fly in the face of
Okay.
historic preservation.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Rochelle, I've got a couple. Rochelle, you mentioned the funding source. So where is the funding coming from again?
It's coming from unspent funds within community and business development, general fund money, that we don't anticipate spending in the current year. So we've made this a high priority.
Okay.
We set the funds aside. Otherwise, we'd have to come back to you for an appropriation from fund balance.
Okay.
So we thought we could find it within the existing fund.
But it's not that you plan to fail to fund something that you previously planned to.
Right.
Other questions? Question that's been raised, I think, in the community is, I think it's knowledge, general knowledge that some council members who have properties downtown. And Jeff, I guess I'd look at you from is there any conflict? Well, first of all, anybody can, the way you've outlined it, can participate, but is there any conflict of interest if, depending on how that's,
We
this
can
is
see
it?
how it finally shakes out, but it looked like it's in the nature of the contract between the downtown property owner and the city. We prohibited, 14,234.
In layman's language, Jeff.
Yeah.
Explain
Thank you.
I'm sorry, it's the statute that I talked about at the last meeting that prohibits a council member of his or her spouse receiving any direct benefit from the contract with the city. You know, we talked about the OIC situation and no direct financial benefit, but it seems to me, and I want to look at it, that this comes pretty close to a contract. You want, there'll be a grant agreement.
Mr.
Yes,
Knight?
sir.
And it's, okay.
No, I recognize you. I didn't see his hand.
No, my hand is not up. My hand is not up.
What I was gonna say, and I don't think I don't know why people have a perception that council members that own property or family members that own property are running down here getting grants. Now, I'm just gonna put a disclaimer, I haven't, or my family haven't received not one grant to fix up any building downtown. And I don't think people buy buildings
Nor
looking
purchase,
for, or
nor
purchase
nor
buildings,
purchase one.
looking for grants.
Right.
I think if you're gonna purchase a building, you need to have your money to fix it up, and if you can apply for a grant, then that's something that will help you along the way. So when you say council members, there's not too many council members that sit around this table. So I just want to say, I haven't applied for a grant, or my family member haven't applied for a grant. And if they choose to do so, they are citizen taxpayers, that they should not be excluded from a grant. And I'm glad you cleared that up in
Yeah,
what you said.
yeah, I mean, it could be in the situation where
Right.
there's enough money that everybody downtown can get one.
Because if a
Looks
code
like
can be
they're gonna
enforced
Pick
on
pick
a,
and choose, if it's
Right.
like utility service,
Right.
you know, that's a contract that we all have, you have, and everybody else has.
right,
But it looks like to me that this program is going to be limited in funds, at least initially.
And I thought that, we also had an issue about the program being in effect for a certain period of time. And after a certain period of time, if people are eligible, then that's fine. Because the one thing that I feel, we gotta maybe look at this on a legal term, because if I can be taxed, and if I have to pay utilities, and if I'm bringing jobs and developing properties that other people are doing the same, but yet do not have the same advantage to participate when others in line are before me to do so, that seems very close to discrimination to me.
Well, once you become on this, once you sit on this council, you lose some of the rights that other citizens have. For
Right.
instance, you can't sell insurance
Right,
to the city.
right,
And I think it's more in the nature of that situation.
right.
but you cleared it
But
up.
as I said, we will look at it when the program, gets up and running.
Seems like it would be incestuous if you were rolling out a program and you first in line to try to take advantage of
Yes.
it.
Okay.
That seems,
And
that seems
there's
like that's a
also
big
some
issue.
subjectivity apparently
Right.
as to who's going to be chosen
Right,
by the people who you at least indirectly supervise,
Right.
including the city manager. So, as I said, we'll look at it.
right.
We did want to get one point of clarification, I can talk to you afterwards, but if the contract or the application, if that person is leasing a property, and they can be leasing that property from a council person, the contract is with that person leasing the property, and the council person would just give permission for them to get the grant, and they would get the
The
grant.
council person gets the benefit.
Uh,
So they're the owner.
I'm just saying, we don't have, I mean, it sounds like a legal issue, but I can tell you, we won't be running trying to get $5,000.
So if
We can go ahead, I can vote for it with full conscience, because that's not an interest, that's not why we put it, Andre Knight put it on the table. I advocated for it, and everybody around here voted for it, and we
Yeah.
did not do it to enrich ourselves. That's not what we've ever done, and that's not what we plan to do. So you can take that bogus argument off the table. This is what's needed to jumpstart movement downtown. That's why we said it, that's why we support it, and that's what needs to happen. So we can take that off the table. You don't have to worry about the application. We do it next year of the year.
Chris, and then.
Yeah, I don't
then
think that
Reverend Joel.
anybody's accusing anybody, but it's just that when you set up a grant, you set up conditions.
Sure.
Receiving it, that's when you need to talk about what we can. and-
Yeah, but there
But it
is,
was-
but
it
but
was
there is
in the
intentional
language.
conversation
It was.
continually perpetuated in our newspaper and online, which, and even in this whatever little petition thing about voter, so that stuff is out there. We didn't put it out there, don't know who's behind it, but we can tell you without clarity for properties that we own, we are trying to make downtown work. And we have a right to have business ourselves. We're American
We
citizens.
do. You certainly
And we are capitalists as well.
Reverend
Proud
Joel.
of that.
Reverend Joel.
Proud.
So how would that extend to, not just city council people, but say, people like yourself, other people that may have this type of contact with property downtown? Like workers, employees?
Anybody connected?
That's the same issue. That's the
So-
same issue, the same issue is raised.
Okay. So it would extend,
Public official. It would depend, you really have to be involved in making the contract, you have to have some authority. You know, if you don't have much authority, it may not violate the statute. It need to be not official department head or somebody like that that's involved in making of the contract.
So this would extend then to other programs like this, right, like housing incentive grants? Or anything else that the city has?
Yeah, I mean, we may look at it from the standpoint of, what the demand is relative to what's available. If the funds are limited, I think certainly so. But if it's something, the program's got plenty of money and everybody that wants it can get it, then, it presents a different situation.
Any other questions? Kevin, thank you very much. Look forward to the new facades.
So you will be hearing more about that this week. It'll be out, right? Right, Kevin?
Yes.
Very good.
So this doesn't need anything, we can just go ahead and get it
We
done?
can just get it done.
Good job.
The funds are in place, and it's just a matter of putting the word out, applications coming in, and start it going. Okay, well, we'll invite Will back up again to talk about some proposed text amendments to the land code. This is one of the sticks that we talked about at the retreat, some of the amendments that need to be before council for consideration in order to increase our enforcement down there. And while he's preparing for his presentation, we do have a letter of support for code enforcement and for downtown grants, which we're passing around to claim in today to my members of council. This is a petition that's signed by, I think, in excess of 200 individuals who are very supportive of council's direction at the moment of going forward with more enforcement, utilizing what's on the books to enforce, as well as to provide the carrot to help people improve their properties. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So one of the items that we looked at, so which we already have in the code, is demolition by neglect. So we have that. It's a tool that you can use if you so choose. But in there, I've proposed some pretty substantial changes to make it more consistent with what I've seen around the state. A lot of times they reference an appeal to the Board of Adjustment. Appeals can go there, but I'd rather a hardship case or anything go to the Historic Preservation Commission, because that's the district where demolition by neglect is bound. So having that option for them to go and have that group, entertain some of these items. Good.
Yes, I have a question. As the land development code exists today, demolition by neglect is only able to be used in downtown historic districts. Is that what you're saying?
It's only written for the Central City Historic District. Demolition by neglect can be used in other historic districts, but
Is it only for historic
It's-
districts?
essentially, the way the statute, I think it's only for historic districts if you provide an ordinance for it.
So that's general statute.
I believe it's general statutes.
Can we just confirm that? And the reason I asked that question is for years, we have had ongoing concern
Sure.
from communities who live near, in and around industrial properties. And owners of those properties have not invested in those properties. They're unsafe. And unlike downtown, they are adjacent to where people live, work, transport, kids playing, and nothing has been done by the city council or staff in code enforcement, or even saying you need to just fix your property up. So while this is good, and I'm supportive of many of the things I saw in here, I'm also interested in what we need to do to clean up all of it. And look at all corridors within Rocky Mount where you have declining commercial properties that have either laid waste and vacant. We've had South Rocky Mount community for years have come and complained. We had the issue before in Richard, in your ward, in my ward, in Happy Hill community. And I'm just saying, it'd be interesting to me, if we're gonna do this, then let's be fair to all Rocky Mount.
Sure, and that, thanks for sort of teeing it up for me, because that sort of leads into the next one about regulation of non-residential buildings and structures. It's typical you have a housing code. Some people use their housing code and make slight additions to it. I think that would be maybe a little confusing here, so I've found some language that we can put in the building section, so it specifically says building, non-residential structures, and adds code enforcement elements to it. And that, if that's the direction, that would be citywide. So looking at the demolition by neglect, which is generally for historic districts and landmarks, that's the one element, but as you mentioned, what do we do about the next street over, or the main corridors, or anything like that? So having a separate from the housing code, I think it's chapter 11, but adding in our building, we have space in there. If we could make sure all that, passes the legal test, that'd be another enforcement tool that we can use to address. So we do some minor things in building inspections. If there's a facility where the doors are open, we'll go there, we'll board it up, we'll close it up, but we're spending our money doing that as opposed to enforcing that they hold up to the same standards as what we want downtown and what we hold the housing code enforcement to. So that's a lengthy addition there. The only thing in here that's not an addition is the changes to demo by neglect, I think, to make it a little bit more efficient in the process. It had a hardship. You have to allow for the hardship test, but it said, the chief financial officer, the director of development services, putting all of us in a room could be pretty cost prohibitive and trying to figure out a time, but within historic guidelines, there's also a hardship test when you're trying to do some work. So having it funnel to the historic commission, I think would be a way to streamline that. And then you also maintain an appeal process to Board of Adjustment, because you don't directly go to Board of Adjustment, who may not be as well equipped to respond to historic events or nature. So again, the code enforcement, we also talked about, there's been a lot of interest in Main Street beautification. You just heard Kevin, wherever he ran off to, but display windows for vacant commercial establishments. That could be historic district. We could tighten that up just to be Main Street. So we're not having boarded up windows. We're not having garage doors out in front of places. So that's an element too. But then when you send or do an enforcement like that, say, well, we've got $5,000 if you'd like to take that off and throw in an awning. And in the same token, Joe Seth or anybody in development services could steer them in the right direction, say, what you're doing here is a minor work. It doesn't have to go any further. It meets the guidelines. There'll be no additional time added to your request. And we have things available and tools for you to utilize. So you don't want to, again, punish everybody all the time, but you got to have a little bit of flexibility and allow them that opportunity. But the display windows would allow someone to put in some artwork, any sort of display. If you want to do some nonprofit work, it's really liven up, our Main Street corridor where it's needed. The other addition was something that was mentioned to me about temporary uses and adding sort of a pop-up retail element to downtown and making it a little bit easier and more flexible for someone that wants to open up sort of a one-off shop or retail at any sort of situation. So you have a temporary process, so they're not having to fund significant renovations. It allows people that may be operating a business out of their home or online a small entry fee into brick and mortar at an event or at some stated time frame to allow them to do that, where we don't really have that now. But adding, you know, some language to the temporary use standards to sort of reduce some of our regulations and allow people that want to open up a pop-up art gallery, retail shop, anything like that. So
Wouldn't an example be vendors that come into the mall over the holidays, Christmas holidays, they take a vacant property and they set up the display and sell their goods. At the end of the holiday season, they're out and going.
it would depend on how you want to, you know, I put in some base language in there for, I think it was like 45 days initial, and then extend another 45 days. You could have it for, you could add even more to it, holiday season, you know, 45 days, and you might want to limit your uses just for the time frame. You may not be able to make food or sell alcohol. You may not be able to get everything you need done in that time frame. So leaving some of those things out for county health inspectors and everything else. But if you want to open up a clothing shop, or you want to sell some handcrafted goods, we'd like you to be able to utilize space downtown that people can get rent money from. You can, you know, sort of activate a space without having to draw, you know, a larger retailer or anybody else. But you can feel out, sort of, you know, expand your market or however you've created your business. Yes, sir.
So, back to what Mr. Black was saying, that we got property like up Coker Road that is all grown up, rubbish all around it, and it just go unnoticed.
Right.
You know, how do we really get some code violations around that type of property?
Yeah, you basically have to add this element to the, you'd have to add the non-residential element to the code. And that would be citywide. And then a little bit in the ETJ draft. So that would be your framework. Some people use their housing code and make interpretations and kind of stretch a little bit. You get caught up in some legal issues. I prefer to have it separate under building as opposed to housing.
This is more business that have vacated,
Non-residential.
non-residential?
Non-residential
Yeah.
building structures.
Yes.
Everything. So any sort of vacant commercial strip center, it would sort of follow along the demo by neglect. So if you'll bear with me, if a strip center has broken windows and the roof's peeled back, you would have tools, whereas demo by neglect is only specific to historic district.
Sounds like you're interested in that. Manager, if we could get staff to draft some language to address that, because we all have some commercial buildings in our wards. It's been there, and what Charles, the previous manager, have said, that we didn't have the monies to demolish commercial buildings. But if we can get the language, because some of those commercial buildings, they are a safety issue, and they are a danger to the public. And so if we could, you can direct staff at some point to do that, it would be great.
Our commercial demo budget this year is $50,000, which is, you know, if you tear down one building, you're done.
Well,
But we're able to use that to secure locations.
in 2004, the housing demolition was 60,000,
Mm.
and we increased it to 200,000. So from that period on, what has been the last 14 years, we've been aggressively doing that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's also we need to aggressively, or it needs to begin to address some of those commercial entities as well.
And
I'm
you
sorry.
finished? No. Well, I was gonna ask you, so on the enforcement side, I read through, you did a really good job. I thought you streamlined it, cleaned it up, put some teeth where it needed to be. But on the enforcement side, really demolition is like the last option, right?
Correct.
That's the far distant last option.
Correct.
And so what this does do, I thought, unless I'm incorrect,
Mhm.
is that it really forces the owner to have ongoing substantive conversations with the city staff that's responsible for approving the safety of properties. And then if the property owner is non-adherent, non-compliant, or non-responsive to the staff, it imposes civil penalties. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it really becomes a collection issue then at that point, right?
That's right.
And so I didn't see anything that says we will take the property and tear it down.
Yeah,
I know, but that could be an enforcement, but I didn't see
yeah,
that.
you don't want that. What you want and what we get to the point of is if they're not willing to do the work,
Right.
we take the money out, correct whatever minimally to keep a structure safe. But yeah, you're right, you know, if you, anywhere in Rocky Mountain, any of the corridors, that's kind of be what everybody's looking at. And that could be, you know, this could be major. But the idea is to not have that first step be just demolish this building. Because it really doesn't work. You will be out of money in no time. But we want to make sure that the attention that we're giving to other areas, we're also focusing on those which people see every day as well.
Of course, the other step in this, and it has been brought up before, which is, you know, when you get to a point where you have so many liens on a piece of property, and whether or not the city is willing or wanting to foreclose on the property for the liens, and then the question becomes, well, we certainly don't want to become realtors in this. Is it more appropriate to do that and then turn the property back out for other investors? That's just a question that has been raised. I think what you have to be careful with in doing that, though, is you may very well sell it to somebody else who's not going to do any better than the previous owner. So you have to be really sensitive, really careful about foreclosing on properties. If you don't have a solid program to move it forward, then we'll find ourselves back in a similar situation.
Well, doesn't that speak to something that Dr. Johnson said, and actually something Reverend Joyner has advocated for, and that is maybe the entrepreneurial opportunity that something like this creates, whereby done well, and I'm not dismissing what you're saying at all, but to create an opportunity for people here to get involved in acquiring buildings and renovating them and turning them into a productive property.
And you know, the city not be given the lien. That's the other part of it, is that if you have a new ownership prospect out there, the city still collects on the lien, because those are funds that, you know, of course, we have spent in our resources to, you know, either cut the grass or take the building down, or, you know, do whatever we need to do over a course of time. And to Councilman Blackwell's point, it becomes a collection issue. It's really about that collection. And if you can collect on the liens, then I think you'll have sufficient pool to really fund some of these other initiatives that you want to put in place to help people who really have the desire to improve the building, but perhaps just don't have the cash to do it. So that helps to build that pot, that pool of money, to make it available to people before on the front end as opposed to on the back end.
I don't know how you're gonna collect on the lien if they
I
don't
know.
want to pay.
Yeah.
I don't know if they might have to flex a little bit better, man.
Yeah.
If we got people who are interested, you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying, in helping support and move
Yeah.
it. But all we ask, at least where I sit, is that we explore how to expand the purview of where we can work with this. And at least if the word gets out at Rocky Mount that we're growing, we are wanting all of our city to look great, and we need everybody who owns property to join us with this. And if you don't do it, somebody's gonna come talk to you to help you get it done. You know, so.
Sounds good.
And then, of course, this is the final opportunity, I think, through other discussions with council, we'll put it in a position that you can take action on it. We're not prepared to do that today.
So we got a chance.
But you got a chance. Now, you've heard the presentation, to go back and read it and have other thoughts, and I think through other meetings, we'll be able to discuss it a little bit further before coming back for any particular action on the part of the council.
I so appreciate you saying that, and we've talked about that becoming more the standard practice of items like this being presented in this fashion, and for us to hear it, and then for the public to hear it, and for us to receive input from the public. And when we get to the final decision point, we're in a position to make the best decision. So thank you for that.
We'll bring it back, again, we'll look into those items you mentioned, Councilman Blackwell, and then, once we receive further direction, the process would then be, getting it to the planning board for their, recommendation, and then ultimately back to you guys for approval and adoption.
Thank you. Thank you, Will.
Okay, the next item is the Rocky Mount Bike Plan. So Brad, we're gonna ask you to discuss this, with the council.
Yeah, we're gonna be quick, because you guys already saw this in June, I hope. So I hope we are gonna be quick. So just real quick, included in your agenda package was a memo kind of outlining the bike plan that you guys took a look at in June. Since that time, it has gone to DOT for final approval by DOT, so we're back to you guys to kind of ask for the final adoption of it. In the memo, there was a link, if you guys took the time, there on the city's NPO website, and actually see the full document, which is this version right here, but you can see electronically. And then what was included in your package is the executive summary. So, just real quick, next slide. So, next slide. So the executive summary part, we did an extensive outreach, public outreach, steering committee, public outreach, projects, workshops, certainly some online surveys to get input from across the county. Got excellent feedback from the surveys. Bob really kind of beat the bushes to get feedback from that. Some of the best we've really gotten, I think, on bike impact and the transportation and the response to surveys. So next slide. So that just outlines kind of the process we went through in terms of developing the plan. Next slide. This is the overall screenshot of the full bike plan, which is I think 95 projects. The one circles are proposed bridge improvements, and one over Sunset I think has already been done with the new bridge. But you've got to identify those locations where we want bike facilities, so when a bridge replacement project comes in, that gets that bridge redesigned in a way that's bicycle pedestrian friendly.
Is there a lane for bicycle lane?
No, but it's got wider outside lanes, so you make sure that you have capacity for kind of cars and enough capacity, lane capacity, so like a 16-foot lane instead of a 12-foot lane on the bridge. Make sure we have sidewalks, which before, the sidewalks were that wide on Sunset. So those are the kind of things we're looking for.
Or you can be able to put some bike destination on it, like some, I see some areas that do have some signage for bike safety.
Right, so this overall plan is targeted at various different types of improvements based on the color code, and we'll get a little bit more into that in just a minute. So not every street's gonna be a bike street, right? We're trying to get folks going on different locations. We have a few of them around town, like Hammond Street, you'll see we have some bike head things. And right off the top of my head, I can't remember the ones on the east side that are in place, but we do have some, but the Hammond Street, I just drive regularly, so it sticks in my mind. So, next slide. So these are the greenway priorities, 4 top greenway priorities. The Monkey Hill Trail, which you guys are very familiar with on that. Next slide. Keep the picture up, let me just walk through real quick. So we have the Monkey Mill Trail, Cowlick Trail, which is this one on the east that loops around and connects to the Tar River Trail at MLK Park. And then has some loops going down around the
cemetery on the south side. And then Parker's Canal is actually a piece of the Cali Trail, which goes from Holly Street back to the event center. One of the top 5 priorities. Barbecue Trail is really just a small piece linking back to Rocky Mountain Vale, so we get this loop. And then we have the other project from the north side, Westlake, which falls existing utility easement for the most part. But get us all the way to town. We have some real challenges with freeways kind of north and west to get that connection. And then actually in the TIP, the statewide TIP, there's a trail that's heading towards Washington, right? And that's the bottom.
Oh, you're referring to Tar River Trail extension?
Yeah, heading back west. And that's really outside of our jurisdiction, so it's not in this piece. So next slide. So these are the top 4 bikeway priorities. These are really low-hanging fruit. And I don't know if you picked, we'll pick it up on a little bit later. It's called Peachtree is actually will be our very first kind of dedicated bike lane, and that's coming this summer. But that the purple ones on the south side, that's a kind of continuation of that project that's going along Falls and Peachtree. And we have funding, committed funding in the DOT budget, correct, for the Church Street project?
Yes.
Yes, so the Church Street project is committed in the current TIP, so that'll be coming forward in Moncton Mills is now committed 2025. Write this down. Somewhere around here, I've got a note on when that was committed.
I think Church Street was
2023. Yeah, 2023. So, and then the Eastern Avenue, Eastern Avenue and Avondale are bike boulevards. You see those? That's really just kind of share the road on low volume streets. Not a lot of cars down there. Similar to kind of what we got on Hammond Street, but directing people to those locations. And the overall plan ends up connecting those dots. And then Virginia Street, Church and Franklin Street are really bike boulevards. Either a two-way bike boulevard or the one-way pairs, one way going in 2 directions, similar to what we're getting ready to do on Falls and Peachtree, although we don't have physical structure on Falls and Peachtree. Short-term priorities, next slide. So the heavy lines are the short-term priorities, and these are relatively low-hanging fruit in terms of cost. So those will be the ones that we're going to be trying to go after short-term through whatever funding availability we have through the DOT TIP project for some PAL bill if it's low cost to put down painting, bike markings and signs and those kind of things. But when we start physical and structure, we're going to need to find some other funding. RF grants, IPA grants, CMAC funding. So we're looking at those pots to try to program those ones that have real physical improvements. So altogether, it's I totaled these up to like 95 miles of bike improvements. The whole program's $18.5 million. We get that, but we're not looking at seed funding. We're looking at these other funding sources, and depending on what the funding availability is that matches with the project, kind of that one's in advance. But these ones, these top 4 and 5 you see, and the short-term ones are the ones we're going to be pushing first.
So Brad, with the so you're saying sidewalk projects do not compete with bike projects for funding, or are we going to the same place for?
Some of them will compete. So CMAC, most of the sidewalk we've done has been through either PAL bill matching on a widening project or CMAC. So we have that funding allocation, and those are projects that are identified through the pedestrian plan that's already been done. It's potential though that a CMAC could fund these projects. We have a certain allocation, so if it's funded through CMAC, it may or may not compete, and it's going to be a council priority which one you want it.
So you would bring that to us so we can figure out.
That's right.
We're trying to get it all done, right? But if we can't, we're trying to make sure that we have certain corridors that have the both ends.
That's right, we're always looking for the voting, absolutely. That's correct. Yeah, the Greenway projects are gonna definitely be TIP projects, because they're more funded. The Cowlick Trail project's already been going through the scoring process. The more we can do to advance the right of way and solidify that right of way, the more chance that has to move forward. So we'll be doing those kind of things to advance the Greenway projects, blocking up right of way, submitting them through the TIP scoring process, and keep chipping away at it, trying to advance them through that process.
So
The
is
other
that-
ones will be more local dollars, Powellville and C.
So is that 95 miles connected miles or different sections?
Yeah, so, if you go back to the very first one, that one right there. So you see all these things, they all connect.
Oh,
Right, so they're not gonna connect right away, some of them will, we're trying to get them on the ground. But to some degree, yeah, and at some point, they all try to connect. All right, so any questions?
Questions about this?
Yes, so we're asking that you guys would adopt this plan. I think I talked to Jack, he said they can do that in this plan since it's not in this meeting. Because it's not ready.
I don't know if they're ready to, what's the
Okay, I would-
deadline?
We don't have a deadline, so we can take it back, or you can act on it tonight, or whatever your preference is.
I like looking
You
at this.
look at some more.
I have a question about, we was also trying to connect the MLK part with Eastern Avenue. Is that still on
Yeah,
the, coming?
so
Okay, that's the California.
that's the Cowlick Trail.
Okay, I get it.
Right.
So we'll allow council to look at it a
What's
little more.
what's the feelings? Everybody want to think about it a little more?
okay. Good.
Adopt this meeting?
It looks like, I'm looking at, well, let's hear a motion then to adopt.
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Didn't we just have a motion, a comment from down there to wait?
Well, he did, but then everybody else was saying they were ready, so I'm trying
I'm
to
fine.
take some kind of
He
action.
answered my question. You want us to wait? We can.
No, I don't have any problem with it. Just make sure we knew what we were doing.
Right. Well, there's a motion to adopt the plan in a second. So is there any more questions or discussion? Not then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Bullock, for keeping us in good process. And Bob for finding the money.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a housing update. We have, two, bits of information for you. What was sent out, as a part of the committee of the whole packet is an update from, the council retreat, some information that was, provided to you. And then in addition to that, Landis has an outline of a proposed housing policy, for the city. This is still a work in progress, but we wanted to at least give you an overview of what this policy looks like, the structure of it. It's pretty comprehensive, and there's information that's in it currently, and then information that needs to be added. But we want to at least give you a flavor for what we're working on. I think we'll be prepared at the April committee of the whole meeting with the other parts of this so that we can start discussion. But we wanted to at least introduce it to you this evening.
Good evening, everyone. This is a continuation of some information that was shared with you during the retreat. If you'll recall, we talked about strategies, we talked about goals, we talked about objectives. We've also been looking at how other localities have approached housing policies. And as Ms. Small-Tony indicated, this is a work in progress. There are some areas that need some additional work. What we wanted to do tonight was to let you know where we're headed so that you can see the general table of contents. You can see a historical perspective that ties back to previous housing studies and reports and where we're going with this. But our goal is to bring to you a document that is inclusive, that is collaborative, that will also include a process for public information and public input. But we want to make sure that in presenting this information this evening, you have an opportunity to share your thoughts about what may also need to be included in preparing a housing policy for the city of Rocky Mount. Thank you.
Any questions?
So we have time to review it?
Yes.
So will this document begin to sort of outline the work of the Workforce Housing Advisory Commission?
That would be a part of it as well, but all, Dr. Johnson's work as well. The redevelopment commission, we intend to bring all of these different, plans and activities into one document. And it keeps it very active, it has to be updated, more. But at least you have, when we talk about housing, you have one source that you can go to find as much information as you need to know about our housing.
Do you think at some point, we could have sort of like a mini orientation session for all of our boards and commissions that have something to do or have some interface with housing, so that once we define or develop what our approach is, everybody can be on the same page with where we're headed to, and then from all of their different perspectives, how to make our approach better and more engaging throughout the whole community.
Exactly, so that we're all on the same page, that you don't have one group going in this direction, somebody doing this, and it's never coming together under council's direction.
So what are the next steps after? I mean, is there a time limit or time frame you're asking us to review and get back with you? And how far down this process are we going to go before we activate the Workforce Housing Advisory Commission?
Right, I think we've already appointed the Housing Commission. We'd like to have this completed at least for your consideration in April. And so with that, then you can distribute this to the other partners, and some of the partners are listed in here for their feedback. And then refine that, and then perhaps have that workshop that you're talking about.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it
Y'all
for
are
the
finished?
agenda, other than closed session.
Okay.
Requested closed session on my part is closed.
Okay. And let me add to the closed session a matter of economic development. So, motion to go into closed session.
So
Motion and second, all in favor say aye.
I know.